Okay, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and start, and people may be gathering. So I am happy to welcome everyone to our first virtual panel for the Philanthropy Club. And I am Jackie Davidoff, principal of Davidoff Mission Driven Business Strategy, and also an advisor to the Philanthropy Club. So we know you can't see everybody here, but know that you are in the company of around 225 colleagues from around the city and suburbs and even the country. And we are also here with Gus Wilhelmy, whom I wanted to call out as the founder of the Philanthropy Club co-founder back in 1972. And I also want to invite you will be hearing from Rich Gage, who took over leadership of the Philanthropy Club many, many years ago and has really been stewarding our move to forefront. And I also last want to acknowledge Key Montgomery with Forefront, who's been really handling the organizing and technology for today. And you're going to also meet our panelists. I'll go ahead and say who they are now because I know you're excited to hear from them. So we have Arshia Ali Khan, who is the Chief Development Officer at the Muslim Legal Fund of America, and you'll see our faces here. We have Tammy Reed Tran, who is, hold on, let me get the right title because this is important, Associate Vice President of Development at UCAN. And we have Margaret Vagnoni, who is Marketing Manager at Auction and Event Solutions. So those are our cast of characters today. Rich Gage is Senior Development Officer at Lawrence Hall. So now I want to share, before we move into our conversation, a little bit about the Philanthropy Club. So the Gus and his co-founder started the Philanthropy Club with a mission to support the nonprofit sector by shifting resources from those who have plenty to support organizations in the community who are doing work for the good of society. And we are all moved here to support the work that you are doing in your organizations for the good of society and those whom you serve. And I think you will hear from each person here how much they care and how much they matter and how much we are here to support you in your work and your leadership as mission drivers for your organizations. And the club, in case you're just coming to us for the first time, Gus's vision was, this is grassroots. You don't have to pay anything. You come as you are. We are a monthly gathering. We will be convening from now on Zoom the first Tuesday of the month from 9 to 10:30. And I'll go ahead and at the end announce the August session if you'd like to be joining that. So I'm going to share a little housekeeping now before we move into our conversation. So what we're going to do here in terms of format is I'm going to be introducing the topic. The panelists will introduce themselves, and I will field questions that we've generated among ourselves for the first hour. So between 9 and 10, you will hear from the panelists. And then at 10 o'clock, we want you to be putting your questions in the chat. So this is our way of creating community. Usually when we're there in person, we field questions from the audience. So we want to encourage you to create a sense of community as we're speaking. We're here together. We can't see everybody, but we really want this to carry the flavor of we are a community. Envision that you're with everyone, even though you can't see them. So use the chat. Use the chat, say who you are, say what your organization is, put your email and your cell if you want. Put anything you want. So we're going to be creating community with our fingers. And then, feel free to follow up with anyone afterwards. So that'll be the last, starting from 10 o'clock. Rich will be, scooting to your questions and responding to those to the panelists. So let me just look at my notes. So I wanna give a little bit first about, why are we doing this topic today? This is something that Rich really generated for us. And our perspectives at Davidoff are that, we have been observing that, of course, many of our nonprofit clients are facing significant challenges in terms of revenue, in terms of maintaining relationships with donors, even with board, other team members. We're all remote. This is a whole new world. And our view is that, crises like these really reveal gaps. They reveal gaps in our organizations, in our society, as we're seeing, and in ourselves as individuals and as leaders. And there is a natural tendency that we're seeing where people are sort of holding their breath. They're waiting for this thing to be over so that we can go back to where we were. And that is a normal tendency. However, the organizations that really use this opportunity and see the silver lining, that's really what we're here today. Our perspective is that this is actually a time for you, instead of like putting yourselves on hold, to move forward with the intention to use this time to evolve yourself and your organizations and your relationships with your donors to become actually stronger. And you're gonna hear examples from our panelists about how they are doing this. So this is really about, from our perspective, for you as mission drivers, this is your opportunity to either choose one route or choose another. So, and this is really calling out in us as individuals, as leaders, and in our organizations to adapt and create new strategies. And, I think the last point that's so key is that Zoom and other forms of technology have really, they are teaching us as fundraisers that we have so many more opportunities to have touch points with a greater universe with more frequency than we did before. And, people who are mission drivers are seizing these opportunities and really leading their organizations into this new normal. And, this is really a paradigm shift. Zoom has allowed us to blow the doors off our traditional ideas about how we are in touch with and developing relationships with those in our networks, because now our networks are so much bigger. And I think that's really one of the key messages that we want you to take from this today and hear from our panelists on. So our panelists are mission drivers, and they are demonstrating that they themselves have evolved and are evolving in this new world, and they are leading their organizations to do that. So with that, I'm gonna start with our first question, and we didn't want to have this crammed full with questions, so I really want our panelists to breathe and to envision you out there in the audience, and to take these questions wherever you see fit. So here's the first question. What was the situation for each of your organizations, and how did you respond? So you're going to get a lay of the land now for each of them. Whoever wants to start.
I can start.
Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. So excited to be with all of you, and thank you for welcoming us. We hope that everything we share will help you move forward as mission drivers, not only in your organizations, but also in your communities. So where were we? Well, MLFA is a national organization, and we're a 20-year-old organization. Primarily, our fundraising comes from visiting mosques and visiting communities. And so when the pandemic hit, it was definitely something for us to take heed to. Not only was the pandemic coming, but Ramadan was coming. And Ramadan is the holy month for Muslims throughout the world. And during that time, we find half of our fundraising is done during that time. So just to put context, more than half of our budget generally comes, we visit over 300 mosques during that time. So as COVID was coming and Ramadan was coming, for us, it was really an opportunity to take a big step back. And quickly we realized that it wasn't going to go away. I think just like everybody else initially thought, oh, this is just passing through, and in a week or in 2 weeks, we're just going to be just fine. But as the news started trickling in, and as we started to pay attention to what we were looking at, we really just had to take a real deep internal drive. And the call here was for us to really reassess ourselves first to see how essential we were. Do we need to show up? Do we need to exist? So I started asking very basic existential questions for not only for the organization, for the mission, but also for each of us. Like, this was an opportunity to reevaluate. And when we got consensus where everybody was like, yes, we've been in this fight. Yes, we absolutely need to show up. Yes, if we don't show up, the consequences are going to be great. Yes, we need to show up during COVID, after COVID, the ramifications, the political. So we just kind of got that energy together. And then we started to do research, and we started to show up, building content, building programming, and looking at all of our opportunities to get online and really connect, and have our voice be heard and to be part of the conversation. And that was the beginning of our plan and our strategy.
Thanks, Arshia. I think I'm just going to jump in super quick, because I want you all to be sharing your missions. I know people may or may not know MFLA. Talk about your mission.
Our mission, so the mission of the Muslim Legal Fund of America is to advance equality and justice for American Muslims, organizations, and individuals by promoting compliance and protecting their rights in the guise of national security. So we are looking at any national security offenses. I think across America and through the world, when you hear terrorism, you sadly connected to Muslims and American Muslims. 9/11 was something that we were founded after 9/11 to really protect the rights of Muslims and organizations that were being put into that bucket unjustly and incorrectly. So we fight in the federal space, and we fight in the Supreme Courts, and we fight within the courtrooms. So our power is to use the laws of our land, and to show up even in the courtrooms to defend the rights of the innocent. And with that, we have, again, created a lot of opportunity, deterrence, and just pause when, the culture generally says, oh, Muslim terrorists, and, I kind of say it synonymously. And so for us, that's not fair to us. That's not fair to our children. We are born and raised, I say I'm North American, born in Canada, bred in the US for pretty long. I have children born in this country. So I hold my North American flag strong and proud. And so I fight for myself. I fight for my brothers and sisters who have been affected because of these policies and because of these issues, and also for generations to come. Muslim does not mean terrorists, and I will say that until my last breath. And we fight that every step of the way.
Thanks, Arshia.
You're welcome.
Good morning. I am Tammy Ray-Tron, the Associate Vice President at UCAN. UCAN is a 151-year-old organization whose vision is that youth who suffer trauma can become our future leaders. We do that through compassionate healing, education, and empowerment. We serve young people, 21,000 plus young people throughout the greater Chicagoland area and in Illinois. And, we really pride ourselves on doing this through a trauma-informed lens and through one that's culturally sensitive. So the context in which we were facing when COVID hit, we had just started planning for our annual fundraising event, the Youth Leadership Awards, which typically take place in June. It's an in-person effort, $500 a plate ticket. Where we distribute scholarships. We had it in our budget for close to $1 million. It's a huge effort. And the funds generated go to support unrestricted dollars come in to support all of our organization, not just one particular program, but the greatest area of need, right? So we had just started that process. And then probably 2 to 3 weeks after that, we had the order to shelter in place. What does that look like? We had a lot of people who were saying very similar to what Arshia had mentioned. Well, maybe this will blow over. Let's see what happens, and steadily thinking, well, we can't afford to just see what happens. It's a huge deal for UCAN. We needed to really think of a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. And it was still, if you remember, up in the air. There was a lot of nuances and fluctuations and how we were to proceed and what this was going to look like for being in person. When would in-person interactions, when would that begin again? Is that something that was even possible given that we weren't even in a position to work alongside our colleagues? So we had some difficult decisions ahead of us relative to, do we cancel the event? Do we move to an in-person event later in the year? So kind of postpone it until we were back in business, so to speak, or do we go virtual? Canceling is not an option. This again is in our budget for a decent amount of money, so that wasn't an option, not in my mind and not in our VP's mind. Moving it to later in the year, you know, people were like, well, you know, YLA, one of the things that really draws people in is the ability to hear from our young people. We award scholarships through this effort to hear their stories, hear from them, hear where they're going in life. They really wanted that in-person experience. And they're like, well, maybe you postpone, but we didn't have any, you know, idea of when we would be back to quote unquote normal. And if we did go back to normal, how many people would that entail? Is that 10? Is that 50? You know, we typically had 400 something people in the room. There didn't seem to be an opportunity in our near future where that was even going to be a possibility. So, you know, the idea was socialized and tested. We had our president and CEO talking with board members. We ourselves were talking with board members and committee members to get their thoughts and feelings about what do we do. And after probably about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, we came together with our vendor partners. We had event planning consultants, we have marketing consultants, and then we also worked with 1 or 2 other vendor partners who really helped us execute on the event. We made the decision to move virtual. And, you know, it was kind of fly by the seat of your pants from there.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Tammy, and more to come. Because I know a little bit of the backstory. So, Margaret, talk to us about, you know, what you do, what opportunities you're talking to your clients about, what you're seeing out there. I know you work nationally, so you have a broad perspective.
Sure. So I'm Margaret Vagnoni with Auction and Event Solutions. We have been serving the nonprofit world for over 30 years. We're the oldest in the industry. Our mission is to help nonprofits raise more and help money, and raise more and help many. We are a national organization. We're in cities throughout the country, but our base, we're event technology. So we are in-person events. That's what we do. That's what we've done for 30 years. And so when this started, and it was the beginning of March, we were kind of at a standstill for a moment or two, because what do? We are in-person events. We are the technology for events. So we are very fortunate that we are a family-owned company, and we develop our own software. So we were quickly able to get on a call with all of our owners throughout the country and figure out, what do our clients need? What are they looking for? We know that for most clients, like Tammy said, not fundraising is not an option. It's a line item in your budget, and you have to raise money. So for AES, it was, how can we help you raise money? How can we transition to virtual events and help you? And so we were able to tweak our software. We were able to add things. We were able to talk to our clients and see what they needed, and then implement what they needed into our software to help them. Different needs in different areas of the country. As Tammy said, you know, at the very beginning, and Arshia both said, we kind of thought this was temporary. I mean, I'm first to admit, I really thought by June 15th, I'd be back at events. I'd be back doing things, helping our clients. As it progressed, we realized that wasn't going to happen. So it's all of those clients we moved to fall is now, okay, what are we doing in fall? And so that's what we've been doing, is talking to our clients, listening to our clients. What do they need? What do they want? Let them know what their options are. There are a variety of things that you can do, which I can touch on later, to still fundraise and to still have your quote unquote event. My biggest joke right now that I find in this is, Zoom is the new Kleenex. We all call facial tissues Kleenex, whether they're the Kleenex brand or not. And so everybody calls it Zoom. Zoom is wonderful and it's a great platform. There are other platforms out there. So we help our clients with that. It's just really a brainstorming. We want each event to still be unique. And we have the advantage of talking to all of our clients, so finding out what someone's doing. And I think we're in the time right now where everybody has to help each other. We're all in the same boat. It's not a competition of a fundraiser versus fundraiser. It's how can we do this and how can we make it work and how can we meet the needs and meet our budget to help the many people that need our help.
Great. Thank you, Margaret. So here's our next question. How would you talk about the biggest barriers that you needed to overcome? And this could be, in your organizations. It could be mindsets that are like, no, we can't do this. This is how we have to do it. It could be other aspects. So just talk about that. What were the barriers that you had to overcome?
So this is Arshia again. I think we had to come over all of those barriers. And again, we were an organization that traveled. We were an organization that met people face to face. We were an organization that took pride in, knowing every single mosque in the United States. And so the barriers were, again, what mindset, how are we going to do this? What can we do? If we don't travel, how are we going to open those doors? And also, can we make it? We were just kind of looking at ourselves saying, is this even an option or a possibility? So I think the biggest shift was the belief. And I think I just said in the first part of it, that do we need to exist, and just kind of really grounding ourselves and then jumping through those hurdles. Also connecting, we have half of our team are lawyers and they're in courtrooms. So to get them to help us with marketing or building content or creating videos. And, this was down my development kind of pipeline that this needed to happen, but to kind of pull them and say, I need this now. I need a month of this, and I need a weeks of this, and I need to engage this, and I need you to be in stakeholder meetings on this, it was shifting the entire organization. It was shifting and so first came from the belief that we could do this, we needed to do this. And so then after that, it was really, switching the whole menu and kind of pulling in people who naturally out of their comfort zones, getting technology working, initially our calls, where's the camera? Where do you look? We went into details even with our executive director or other, know your backgrounds, kind of look at with a virtual space. So there was a ton of small skills and soft skills and technical skills and hard skills. But I think the biggest barriers was the belief that we could do this, and the belief that we mattered. So showing up and knowing that somebody would respond in a positive way or be welcoming. And I think everyone's in crisis. People are literally dying. A lot of our major donors are in New York, and New York was hit significantly, and we were getting calls that our donors were dying or their family members were dying. So it's like, how do you ask for money in that space? How do you show up, or how do you hold a conversation and so it was just kind of some of those soft skills as well, kind of teaching and training and using those opportunities and devising on where you need to be and what's too much and what's not enough, were all barriers for us to really pay attention to and overcome.
So this is great, and Tammy, before you speak, and Margaret, I just want to emphasize this point because I think all of us are up against those internal barriers of a lot of the things that you spoke about. But I think there's a lot of unconsciousness of like we can't, or we we're going to have to suffer through, or it's going to be, and this is really the fulcrum that we as leaders, as mission drivers, really need to be aware of, watching those thoughts in our brains and having the intention to say, I am not going to listen to that. And really, you know, mission for us is the driver. Like, that's what's going to get all of us. And that's why people are your donors and your board and your employees and your volunteers, because this matters to them. And let that fuel you to being in the unknown and of creating and developing and, you know, seeing what's possible instead of what the barriers are. So thank you.
And before I cross over to just to add to your point, I just wanted to say courage was something that we say courage is the movement through fear, like, you know, and that's kind of what makes you brave and what makes you courageous. So courageous leadership. And I think for all of us who had the responsibility of survival, not only for ourselves, but our organizations and our staff, it was just, we were afraid. I was afraid. And I knew that people were counting on me to show courage and to move past my own fears. And I felt like it started there. The moment I kind of checked in with myself and said, we're going to do this and we're going to drive and we're going to just put ourselves out there. That I think was the beginning of everything else that came after that.
It's great. Okay, Tammy.
Well, I think for us, our biggest barrier per se was just creating a vision and bringing everyone along with that vision. Our VP of marketing said this multiple times over the last 4 months. We were building a plane while flying it. This was new for everybody. It was new for us. It was new for all of our vendor partners. It was new for our board. It was new for our staff. It was just new. And, you know, as Arshia said, we didn't have an option. We needed to make this work. There was no choice. Our young people, the families that we serve, the communities that we serve, they deserved our very best. And so, you know, once we established what that vision was, and the vision was really to, you know, hone in and key in on what drew everyone to the in-person event to begin with. And that was our young people. So we had to figure out, how do we feature and highlight our young people? How do we do that in a way that's compelling? How do we do that in a way that doesn't exactly mimic our in-person event? There was no way that we were going to have a 3.5-hour virtual event. It just wasn't going to happen. Nobody was going to stay. Nobody was like, okay. So what we ended up doing was really honing in on very specific pieces of what we thought were compelling. And we originally had planned on a 30 to 40 minute virtual event. It ended up being closer to 50, 56 minutes. But that was a decision that was made shortly after, during that week after we had done our rehearsal, in large part because everything that happened with George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement was just kicking off. Our event took place on the Saturday following a lot of the demonstrations, the looting, and the rioting. And it became very personal in many ways, in that as an African-American woman and fundraiser, it was very critical for me to create and to continue forward in this environment that allowed our young people to shine and not to be belittled, not to be looked at through a lens of only what people were saying in the news. And so I think what really helped was that we had put a lot of work in creating this vision of pushing forward this positivity, of pushing forward how do we help our young people articulate their stories, how do we help them articulate their hopes and their dreams, and how do we help them do it succinctly. That was big because we only had a finite amount of time, and we still had to keep our eye on the prize, and that this was a fundraising event. So, you know, the biggest hurdle was this common vision, and then having this common vision and managing the multiple facets of what that looked like moving forward. So we had event planning specialists who are really helping us with our donor work. You know, the question always comes up, how do you ask for money during this period of time? Well, it starts with your relationship. If you've done the work and you have solid, strong relationships with your donors, then being able to engage with them to see how they're doing, you need to check in with them first. Let me see how you're doing. Are you healthy? How are you doing mentally? How are you doing emotionally? you don't ask for any money. You just check in because they're people just like we are, right? The relationship is key and relationships matter. So, I think that the first piece is making sure that those relationships are strong, making sure that people were in a good place. And then also, when you look back at, I've been in the game for a little bit of time since and have sat through, many kind of nuances and ups and downs in the economy with fundraising. And when you think back to the 2008 pandemic, or not pandemic, but the downturn, economic downturn, we still had to ask. We still had to be in front of folks. So you can't stop the conversation because this is going on. You still have to have a dialogue about what your organization is doing. So we had to say, UCAN is an essential provider. We are still providing services to more than 200 young people and families, and we are still out there. There are elements of our staff who work in certain programs who were still working every day. They were going out, they were going into community, they were going into our residential home, they were going into do visits with foster families, there were virtual mental health sessions. All of that made a difference. It wasn't just about our event. It was about who we were and who we are and how we showed up and being able to convey that story and to be able to convey the impact. We became, in many ways, very similar to a community health worker in that our violence intervention and prevention staff are not only out there talking about, you need to rethink kind of how you're approaching this particular, situation. If it was something where people were getting into it over whatever, to, have you heard about COVID-19? Do you have PPE? Do you know what's best practice? Are you staying in the home? Are you, they were out there delivering those types of services alongside what they were originally supposed to do. So I think that, the hurdle was more than one, but it was all these little things. But when you look at it and you're able to tell that story and to tell how you're fulfilling your vision and mission, it became less of a hurdle and it became more of a boom. Because then people were like, well, let me support this organization that's doing so much. And here's my opportunity to do so because this event is coming up and they need our support. So I think that was huge. And I think the other piece is, and then I'll stop, is that being open to the feedback and the ideas of all parties involved. We had multiple people on staff, we had one of our development coordinators was a huge, tremendous asset in this process. Our VP of development, our president and CEO, our board, our campaign steering committee, they all weighed in and they brought ideas and thoughts. We had our vendor partners, our event planners. We had a marketing firm that had wonderful ideas. We had, a lot of people who had ideas. Being able to bring everybody together, sift through the ideas and understand what is doable and what is not, and then making decisions to move forward. So there has to be, to what Arshia was saying, a great deal of courage to open up the opportunity to engage and be engaged, but then also to say, okay, that's a great idea, but we can't do that right now. We have to stay focused because this ultimately, bottom line, is that this is a fundraising event. And so we still also have to generate revenue. So, it's just finding that balance and then and honing in on that and then bringing people along because it's not just your event, it's all of our event.
So that's great, Tammy. So I want to emphasize that because I think this is a message everyone would benefit from. So what Tammy is saying is she really used this opportunity to more deeply engage, we might call it your brain trust, to actually reach out to donors and saying, hey, this is a new normal. We want your thoughts on, here's the way we're envisioning this particular situation or leveraging this, and we want your perspective. So again, using the technology and using this opportunity to actually strengthen and deepen your relationships with your donors, with your board. We need you. We want you to be part of, new whatever it is that we're developing, and we want your perspectives here. So you're really seeing and seizing the opportunity to deepen the relationships and to widen them. And that can also apply to reaching out to potential new donors. Like the sky is the limit. That's really one of the messages that we want you to take from this. Any narrow beliefs about what your lane is, this opportunity, this technology, the way that we're all touched by what's going on, those are all opportunities to leverage. So with that, before Margaret, we hear from you, I want to encourage people to introduce yourselves in the chat. This is part of the Philanthropy Club is about creating community. So we know we can't be here, in sight, but we want to know you're here. Put your name, put your organization, put your email, put your cell, put your questions. At 10 o'clock, again, Rich is going to go through Skim for questions, and we're going to open it up, and we want to hear your questions. So, Margaret, what were you seeing? What are you seeing as the barriers among your clients to?
Right. So I think my other two counterparts hit the nail on the head a lot. It's overcoming what people think. We have realized that people are so used to in-person events, and people have planned in-person events for years, and it's down to a science. So there's not a lot of thinking going on a lot of times. It's, we do this, we do this, we do this. It's who the speakers are going to be, or who the presenters are going to be. It's the program. And so we have had to, and we've learned too. I had a client, ask, what do you do in this situation? We've never been in this situation. We have not had a pandemic for a number of years. So, we haven't had the opportunity of not being able to have an in-person event. And so we quickly had to talk to our clients and ensure them you can still have an event. It is not the end all be all because you can't meet in person. The key, like Tammy said, you have to be honest with your donors and with your guests, and they all understand. And especially now as we're deeper into it, I think that people are expecting these. They are fully aware in-person events will not be happening in the near future, and so they're looking for you to still have your event. They want to still support you. They want to still participate, and it can be a fun event still, even though we're not together. You can have watch parties, you can have different things. So that has kind of become the barrier we faced, is talking to our clients, who many of our clients are the development directors or whatnot, but they're not the end all be all. It's boards and it's your internal organization. And so relaying, our clients are all wonderful and we love them to death, and they quote unquote get it, but getting that information and convincing the powers that be to go ahead, we've seen has been difficult. So it has been a lot of showing them, sharing. Again, it's where we're all a community, sharing of their events. Look at Tammy's event. It was successful. They did a phenomenal job. You can do it. And here's some tips, here's some tricks, what they can do, also what they shouldn't do. We had an event recently that the MC's background was a pile of laundry in his laundry basket. Not really appropriate, or not professional, things like that. So that's what we found, is just being there for our clients, listening to our clients. The bottom line, we're all in this together, not to quote the song, but it's true. Every single person has been affected in one way or another by COVID. So I feel like everybody understands it and gets it, and it knows that these nonprofit organizations are still so necessary in everyday life. And so there is still a need to support them. And we can't just wait till this blows over, because unfortunately the end is not in sight. So we need to support them now while we can.
That's great. Thanks, Margaret. Based on, this is really for you, Tammy and Arshia, based on what you've done and maybe even what you have planned for the near future, what did you learn from your experiences in these past few months that would lead you to say, you know what, next time I would do this? What would you do differently based on the experiences that you've had to this point?
For me, I think, and this is some of it I didn't have any control over, right? What I would have probably done differently was have the benefit of time. You know, it was stressful. It was very stressful. And I think a lot of that stress was because I had put on myself the expectation that, yes, there's a pandemic and yes, we had to shift, but that doesn't mean that we're going to do just an okay job. We're going to do a great job. We're going to do a fabulous job. That is what we are going to do, and that is the pressure that I put on myself and that I put on others. The pandemic was an excuse that we were not going to take. It was something that had an impact on everyone, but that doesn't mean that we would do ourselves short shrift and that we would do the same for our clients. So, if I had the benefit and the grace of time, that would be, fabulous. Of course, you can't control the pandemic, you can't control shelter in place, and all of that. But then from a very just technical, very, if you're getting down into the weeds type of analysis, one of the things that I probably would have liked to see us do a little bit more efficiently was hone in on our ability to gather the data from those who we open the event up to. So as we shifted to the virtual event, again, generally our ticket price has historically been $500 a plate. That is not an affordable option for a lot of people, but a lot of people are very interested in our youth. And so we use this as an opportunity to open up the door and open up the portal for anyone to participate in the event. But by doing that, we needed to kind of market it in different avenues and different ways, through social media, through email, through word of mouth. We tried to be creative in how we sent out save the date information and save the date messaging and invitation information. And then we didn't have any barriers for people being able to click on the blue button on our website to say, see live event, to see the live event. We just wanted them to come. I think one of the things that the pandemic in general showed a lot of people is that, this is pretty much an even playing field. We're all vulnerable here. There's no hierarchy. We're just in it as people. And so in many ways, it's how we approach the event. There's no hierarchy here. We're in it as people. We all want this moment in time. We all want to see some positive messaging about what it takes, the gravitas that, people have to achieve their hopes and dreams. And so we just took away that. But by doing so, we missed some opportunities to collect data. And as many fundraisers know, and I see Rich and I see Arshia kind of nodding, and Jackie nodding as well, and Margaret is data is king or queen, not to be sexist. And if you don't have it, then I think, you lose some of your ability to follow up. Because in my mind, an event is only a portal to the developing relationship that you're growing with everyone who you reach. And so while the event in many ways was successful, and while we were able to reach more people through that effort, the hard work really is, what do you do next? And so if we don't have the data to follow up with folks, then it makes it harder for what do you do next? So that would be probably what I would do differently.
Can I just touch on that? Because I think that's a great point. Sorry, I know I'm not. But what Tammy said is a great point, is you can't stop someone from viewing your event. What we have found and what we are recommending with clients is, while you can still have them sign up. And it's a way to gather information. A little plug for AES, of course, because I have to do it. But we have a virtual hub where we're telling clients, send everyone here. It's information about your event. It's a way to collect donations. It's a way to people to sponsor your event, but it's also a way for them to sign up for the event. And that gives you a platform to collect their email, to collect their information. So while it's still free, it's important to collect that data, and that's our life, is the data. So we completely understand that with organizations. We recently had an event that is normally a 2-day in-person event. They have over 2,000 people attend. Obviously couldn't have it, so they turned virtual. They still had over 800 people sign up for that event. So in that sense, and they, again, like Tammy said, it's promotion and it's communication. It's going down avenues that you haven't thought of before, because it's been $500 to attend. But by letting them sign up for this free event and by promoting this, they had, like I said, over 800. And so they were able to reach those. The key was, after the event, they had all that data. So even if, for example, Arshia signed up for the event, but didn't go, we had her information, and the organization could reach out to them after. Thank you for attending. You can still donate, whatever it may be. It's collecting that data. So that's a big tip that I would recommend, that even if it's free, you can still have them sign up that they're going to participate. And as Tammy said, hers was early. She did not have the advantage of time. This is something, we're all learning as we go. And so, but I have to give kudos, Tammy, your event was still phenomenal and you guys did great. So, but yeah, still have them sign up even if there's a zero cost. And just to touch on that, you could still sell tickets. We have organizations still selling tickets to events, but with that ticket sale, you want to give them something. You don't want to just say, oh, it's $25 to view, because really, like Tammy said, anybody can view it. But if you provide them raffle tickets, we have one organization who's providing a dinner and a bottle of wine with your price that you'll go pick up at a specific restaurant. That organization has partnered with that restaurant so that they're getting a cut of those meals, things like that you can do. So you can still earn money, because we all know your ticket price was not all to the venue and to everything. You earned some profit from that ticket price. So there's a void there that you have to recoup.
Great, thank you, Margaret. So I want to move into the area of race, of how many of us, especially ideally white people, are recognizing and really reckoning with where our country is around race, or is not. And I'm wondering, in both of your organizations, missions relate to race and ethnicity and culture. And I'm wondering, how has this affected you as a leader? How do you feel called, perhaps in a different way? And this is for all of us, even if we're white, to address and move into a deeper level of responsibility, as mission drivers in your organizations around race, cultural, ethnicity, public, social determinants of health, and how they affect different communities. How would you speak to that?
So I can go first. I think when I had started talking about barriers as well, I talked about, just our ability to believe that we can do something. Now we're dealing with national security issues, Islam, terrorism, Muslims, like all of that, wearing hijab, being people of color. I think that one of the biggest learns in this, when I was talking to, my theme was like, are we essential? Do we need to matter? Do I matter? Does this organization matter? A lot of the work for race and religion and ethnicity is also, the internal work that we have to do. We're always outward facing, and we fight for justice, like that. We fund justice, we're looking for justice. But I personally I always struggle with that word, because I've seen it used from all sorts of, perceptions. Whoever is doing the injustice feels like they are just to do that. So the word justice was something that I've struggled with in our mission and our values, but it still remains, because it's still a key principle to the operation. So what I really had to look at is how we expect to be treated, and how many times we kind of talking to my lawyers. Charlie Swift is the executive director of our law center, and he was telling me about the Muslim experience. And I was like, oh, I just thought that was a normal thing, like the Quad S. And I was like, well, that's what Muslim women, hijabis go through. Like, there's a part of me that had accepted, or has accepted, the way I'm gonna be treated. And so that's the internal work that had to shift first. And when I say I am, showing up unapologetically Muslim, our scholars say that, what does that mean? I'm showing up as a Muslim woman with color. What does that mean? I'm showing up as a Muslim woman with color wearing hijab. What does that mean? Like, all of these perceptions have an internal and external exchange. Oftentimes I feel tokenized because people want me as the one Muslim, or the brown girl, or the one who wears hijab. And so even if that I do need to show up, I often say yes, even though I feel the tokenism, because I still have to represent. I still need to have that conversation. So Charlie and I were talking just last week. He said, on the national security spectrum, Muslims don't show up. And the issues that we have is, some of us think, one, the issue is big and we don't want to be associated. One is that people are afraid of us and we're afraid of people. And so if you don't really look at racism and all of these isms from every single angle, I think you're not always aware of how you hold it. So we talked about breaking barriers. We talked about intentional engagement. We talked about just caring, just connecting, just, reaching out to people, human to human. At the end of the day, we, even with civil rights or constitutions, it's easy to say, it's hard to do. The biggest challenge I have, or the barrier that I have with my mission, is people don't realize that the legal system is not just, I'm right, so I'm going to go and win. You're dealing with history, you're dealing with misconstrued data, you're dealing with perception, you're dealing with systems that are big and strong. And so our cases take a long time. The average case, a colleague was telling us yesterday, is 4 years in national security, which we didn't know going into this. So when I budget for a 2-year case and it takes me 4 years, and people are like, well, why is it taking you so long to da-da-da-da-da? What's the rate of this? And what's the cost of that? Like, those are some challenging questions. And we had to really go in spaces that we've never gone before to show up authentically, right? Like, when somebody's in crisis, or when the world is in crisis, you have to show up as your best self and really connect with that person in order to have an authentic exchange, and for them, as Tammy was saying, to show up for you. So kind of moving away from anything that's salesy or gimmicky or whatever, because that's what sells. It wasn't about what sells, it's about what matters. And it was about standing towards what matters and then connecting in that space. And again, people don't get it. I don't get it. Half the time I'm just like, that's complicated. And as a human being, you just want to get someone else to deal with it. But when it's your mission, you have to take the time to understand. You have to take the time to break it down. You have to take the time to see where you're contributing to it, even if you don't want to, and where you're not. So it was just like that bite size, and then really building authentic engagement, explaining to people that the watch list has grown exponentially and the ramifications on that for our children. Telling myself that getting a quad S is not normal. It's not natural, and I shouldn't accept it. And nobody should have to deal with those things. And how to be careful. So it's like a both and I think Tammy can speak to that as well. And this opportunity with COVID and the racial issues opened a platform, opened the door for us, allowed us in where most of the time people wouldn't even care or want to let us in. So again, then being prepared for that opportunity, saying yes to things we're not used to saying yes to, knowing that, I have a voice and I'm going to use it, and so kind of working through that as well has been an important aspect of all of this for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Arshia.
And I think for me, as an African-American woman, I've been in fundraising for almost 20 years. And the vast majority of that has been not necessarily in social services, but in health-related philanthropy. And I've done a wide gamut of fundraising with different groups of people. And I have had to learn how to draw on an internal reservoir to push through people's perceptions, we'll say. That's a very nice word, I think. Perceptions of me and my ability to do my job, which I think I do pretty well. But I think in terms of, taking my own personal lessons that I've garnered over this last 20 years and, kind of landing at UCAN, which is where I've been for almost 3 years now, I have to say that UCAN has been one of the most compelling places that I've had the benefit of working. And when I think about having to work through, continue to fundraise, continue to do my job, and continue in my personal mission, which is to dedicate myself to helping others, and the way I do that is through fundraising, I couldn't have asked for a better place to work. UCAN has a strong diversity, equity, inclusion platform. You know, it informs everything that we do. We're trauma informed, but we're also culturally informed. The organization supports our staff, it supports our young people, it supports the board and our volunteers in a way that really allows people to show up as who they are. Not to show up with, you know, layers that have to be removed depending on the situation. They show up with their experiences. They show up with, you know, their race, their ethnicity. They show up and are confronted with questions about any biases they may have. I think that we unapologetically take on those conversations that require us to really be introspective about what we're bringing to the table, because what we bring to the table as individuals, as organizations, as just a larger kind of body of folks, influences and informs how we do the work. And the question is, how did I become stronger as a mission-driven leader? I became stronger in my stance to be authentically who I am. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, I got another person you can talk to. You know, we don't necessarily have to see eye to eye for you to do as a donor what's right, or for me to do as a fundraiser what's right. Our focus has to be on our clients. And in UCAN's case, it's the young people, it's the families, and it's the community. But it's also just being a decent human being. And I have to say, again, I couldn't have been in a better organization to have gone through this pandemic, to have gone through the Black Lives Matter movement. It's fabulous. I mean, I'm not saying that the movement is fabulous, but the ability to have true conversations and real conversations with people, to be able to be connected to you, Jackie, and to Arshia, and to Margaret, and to Rich, and to have this dialogue. You ask the question about what does that mean for white people, right? I think that what that means to me is that the things that I have been living with and dealing with my entire adult life, period, you now have a little bit better understanding of what that looks like. I don't have to explain that to you. And if I do, it's my choice. But I think that this whole movement has held people accountable in ways to be authentically who they are, for the good or the bad. I'd rather know who you are for, the good or the bad, than to have to kind of figure it out. You tell me where you stand, I'll tell you where I stand, and then let's figure out where we can meet in the middle. And sometimes it's not even the work of meeting in the middle. It's sometimes learning, when we talk about overcoming biases, learning that you may not be so far removed from my perspective. I just have to give you the opportunity to have that conversation with me, and vice versa, so that we can figure out, we're really closely aligned, and I think we can do some really good work together. So, when you talk about the pandemic, and we talk about the Black Lives Matter movement, and we talk about the raising of awareness around what white people can do in this construct, and we talk about what people of color can do in this construct, it's show up. Arshia said it, show up, be authentically yourself. It's from that perspective that I think the real work can be done. I read an article, Claude Robinson, who is the executive vice president at UCAN, shared an article about when basically, I think it was the New York Times or Washington Post, when these things happen, white people join book clubs and they read a book and talk about it and all that stuff. Can I be your book club? So Jackie, can I be your book club? So instead of you just reading that book, can I have an authentic conversation with you that's ongoing, that will help open the door to real substantive change? And then can we together then go have another conversation with someone else? And so I think that, that is how I've grown as a mission-driven leader, and how this pandemic and how this movement has really impacted me at this point in time. It's not anything that I was not used to, but now I'm hopeful that there are new partnerships that can be developed and that there's greater pathways that can be opened. So I'm very glad you asked that question. It's important, it's critical, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. And I want to share on a personal and professional level that my commitment from one of my commitments from what's going on in our country around race is that I will bring up race. I have a lot of platforms, get to present and moderate on panels, and I will bring up race. And I, as a white person, that is my intention, and that's something that I can contribute, and doing my own work around racism and my being racist. And as all white people, it's my editorial comment. So on a note on that, because I'm going to mix my worlds really quick. So I'm on the board of Chicago Women in Philanthropy, and next Thursday, we are leading a conversation. All of you are invited, and I'll put it in the chat. And it is something around the topic of, being an anti-racist in the time of COVID, and it's low threshold, $15. And if you can't even pay that, we want you to come. So I'll put that in the chat. It's next Thursday at 8:30 to 10, I think, on Zoom. So, okay, I'm toggling between, we have all these awesome questions, and I want to get those in. And maybe you can, because I have one other question I think is really important for the audience to hear, and maybe you can work this into your responses to some of the questions, because Rich, I want you to share those. So my question is, what has the impact been of the way that you have handled this in your leadership as a fundraiser? What has the impact been on your organization of your actions? What has the impact been on your board, on you as an individual, on your leadership, on your donor relationships, cultivating new donors? So figure out, that's your job. Figure out how you can work that in, because I think that, as mission drivers, we need to know that our actions influence many, many stakeholders in our organizations. And so
I'll jump in. The impact has been phenomenal. Like, I am almost blown away, and I'm humbled every time, because we are talking and we are connecting. Like, important work has always been important work, and what we all do is important, but losing sight of our connection, I think that happens in all organizations, especially small nonprofits. You have a ton to do and never enough time to do it. And meeting and connecting sometimes feels like a to-do that can be pushed away. And what COVID has kind of allowed is an opportunity for us to just really stay grounded and connected. I call my board members all the time. They call me all the time. We meet on Zoom, we meet on the phone, we call each other, we text each other. Like, I don't feel like, that, again, we talked about barriers, and then we had a mission, you have job titles, all of it is fluid. We're kind of just flowing and we're moving. We are now, instead of holding, our mission kind of tightly in our hands, we've opened it and we're just kind of flying with it. And it's moving, connecting with donors, connecting with new potential donors, showing up in places we've never been, doing online talks, like all of it is just in flow and in movement. So it has been a phenomenal dance. And I take it as a huge opportunity and a humbling. Like, we are all in this together for the greater good of humanity. And if we're not, move away, because those of us who are moving, whether you want us to or not, and we can make things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I would say that, the impact has been the ability for people to truly take on our vision and mission themselves. Whenever you work for, I don't care what nonprofit organization you work for, it always feels like, there are the clients that you serve and the staff, and then you have donors, some of whom are impacted or feel impact of whatever the condition is. Again, I have health-related philanthropy, so oftentimes it was, is a person impacted by the disease or the disorder? Do they have loved ones, or do they just have some sort of sympathy? Are they a grateful patient? Because that really dictated how they were connected to the vision or mission. And I think, you know, Arshia said it best, this is a leveling of the playing field. You know, there is a human condition experience that we're all navigating right now, and it just allows people to absorb and become part of our larger effort in a way that I'm not sure that they were before. You know, I think, you know, we all have volunteers that are really in it, and that's great. But then there are people who are kind of sitting on the sidelines and on the outskirts, and they haven't really, you know, taken it on. They haven't really raised it. They haven't, you know, become that mantelpiece, and they are moving forward in a way that I am very happily surprised about. It makes a difference. It makes a difference when people want to really be a part of the work. You know, it's humbling, it's astounding, it's everything that a fundraiser could ask for, right? It opens the door for those conversations, but then it opens the door for just becoming just a better person, because it's not just about you, and it's not just about your organization, it's about them, and it's about how they're tied to it and their willingness to be honest and open about why they're so vested in this. So, you know, it's been great.
Awesome. Okay, I love this. So Rich, now you get to go through, we have so many questions about new donors, about the technology. So let's just start. And I put the panelists' email in the chat. I also put the Chicago Women in Philanthropy session, anti-racism in the time of COVID. So use your chat. And somebody asked about, can you leave the chat on so that we can go through it? And I suggest actually like scrolling through and copying it and then putting it into a Word doc so that you can get all the resources and all the connections and all the networking. So Key or Nicole with Forefront, I'm hoping you could just let people linger for a few minutes afterwards, or just do whatever you can. Do it now. Okay, so Rich, questions.
All right. Okay, I have to clear my throat here. Just a couple things. I'm going to read the first questions that were written. I'm not going to read all of them because I think some of them are more pertinent to our panelists than others. I will state the name of the person that wrote them. Please bear with me if well, I'm hoping I will pronounce your name correctly. If I don't, it's nothing personal. Okay, let's start with this. This is from Elizabeth Riggs. She's wondering what the virtual event, I guess this is for Tammy and, well, for all of you, what it actually looked like. What were the results? I'm thinking, like, I know we talked about length, how much money you raised compared to live events, that kind of stuff.
So great question. Thank you for asking. You can actually see a recording of our event on the event page, youcanchicago.org/YLA, youcanchicago.org/YLA. We did modify our recommended goals for the event. So as I mentioned very early, we had like a $900,000 something thousand goal. We revised it to $750,000 because we knew that there were some downturns in the economy with companies and individuals. We did a fair amount of fundraising leading into the event, and that is something that I would recommend anyone do, be it in person or virtual. Knock out as much of your fundraising as possible, understanding that you're only going to get a limited amount of resources that evening. We ended up doing a combination live recorded event with some Zoom rooms. So we worked with a vendor, our event partners, our event planning partners really did help us identify another resource that we went into their studio that they had crafted for organizations like ours and others who were wanting to do in-person filming. We did almost, it was when you think of, public television style fundraising, but amped up, it was a conversation. Our president, CEO, or VP of development, and Robin Robinson, who we all may be familiar with as a newscaster, a former newscaster here in the Chicagoland area. She's been our MC over the years. So, they sat down in some club chairs on a stage, socially distanced, of course. And they kicked off the program. Our board chair had a recorded message that opened up the program. It was online. It was streamed through something called Twitch, which from my understanding is what gamers use. I have no idea. It was streamed through Twitch through our virtual landing page. We had fundraising throughout. So we had our donate button always on, and it was always available for folks. We brought our young people into the mix by having pre-recorded messages that were, the content was captured on Zoom, and our marketing partners created basically 60 to 90 minute, maybe 120 minute 20-second, sorry, not minute, 120-second clips. And then we also brought them in through Zoom rooms for live chats. So we had varied content that included live in the studio, going to pre-recorded content, going to, a feed to a Zoom room where there was live interaction, real-time interaction. And then we had people going to, the pre-recorded content. We had Zoom rooms before and after, which were mimicking the in-person event when you go to a cocktail reception or you're at a table with your guests. Instead, we had Zoom rooms that were facilitated by our event planning partners, both before and after the event. So it was just a mix. It was a mix. We raised probably, on the site it says now 709,000. We're probably closer to 725,000 with some revenues that were still coming in, which is phenomenal given that, people say you can't fundraise in a pandemic, and I say, well, you're not really trying. I think that there are ways to make that, make those goals, but you have to manage expectations, and you have to let people know that while it is a good idea, that may not be what we're doing right now.
Just to touch on that real quick too, that's what we're doing is virtual events now. And so we've done quite a few. We have a series that's ongoing every week for one of our fundraising, or one of our clients is doing a series that's going every week. There are a lot of options. I know are running out of time. I could talk for hours. We do this every week. So I think what I will just add is I do this for a living. I do this every week. We have hundreds and hundreds of clients all over the country. I know Jackie said she put my email in. I'm happy to talk to anyone. Of course, I would love you to use AES, but I understand a lot, have partnerships with others. So we are a wealth of knowledge, and we're happy to share that, and there's no charge for sharing that. So please don't hesitate after this to reach out to me, and I can refer you to AV companies. I can talk to you about event planners, all different contacts to help you guys have a successful virtual event.
Do you want to add anything, Arcia?
So we didn't do like an online gala as of yet. We are planning to do that. What we did was we did stakeholders. So we kind of looked at how we engage with our donors, and we mimicked that through virtual. So we did virtual stakeholder meetings where we had small groups. We did one-on-ones online, and we did other smaller events, and we held them. We created PowerPoints. We created music. We did other things to kind of engage with our donors. But we are planning our first virtual gala in September. So I'm going to learn from our panelists and partners here as well, and more to come.
Great.
And I will just echo what Tammy said. We did very well during COVID and Ramadan for our fundraising as well. We raised over $1 million. I think we're getting close to 1.5 overall. So I just wanted to kind of hit that mark. Whatever you do, show up and just do it, because people are giving and people are connecting and people are engaging. I mean, if anything, people want to see good win and people want to see good move forward. So, just ask. that's the first rule of development, right? Ask. You won't know until you try. So.
Great.
Great.
Okay, moving on. The next question is from Lisa Wittig. She asked, for our event silent auction, many of our normal donations come from restaurants, sporting events, and travel trips. All things that either aren't happening now, people aren't interested in, or we cannot collect. I guess maybe you guys could talk about silent auction stuff.
Sure. I can touch on that. She's absolutely right. How do you ask a restaurant for something when they've been closed for 3 months? We're finding that a lot, and procurement is a tough thing right now for upcoming events. My recommendation is to focus on quality versus quantity. You don't need to have 100 packages like we did, for in-person events or whatever. We're seeing a lot of smaller silent auctions, which is fine. There are still some donations. There are great consignment companies out there that can do things for you. We don't usually recommend consignment, but in this day and age, maybe it's a good idea. But I think having a smaller silent auction allows you to focus on your mission moment more, and allows people to say, to give more donations. Or maybe you have a few fabulous items, then turn it into just a raffle and don't do a silent auction. Have them buy raffle tickets for it and have different levels of prizes or something like that. So there's definite still possibilities out there. It's just a matter, maybe this year you scale down your auction.
Other comments? Nope. Okay, next question is from Laura Kinter. Has anyone had success reaching new donors during this time? Since a tour of our space, I guess her organization space, and events are so crucial to our mission, I'm wondering what methods you have all used to engage new donors and start new meaningful relationships while remote.
Mhm. I'll kick it off. I think one of the things that we took advantage of, and I mentioned it a little earlier, but I'll expand on it a little bit, is because we went virtual and because we lifted a dollar amount off of participation, we were able to reach a much broader base of folks. They were able to not only participate in the event, but participate leading into the event. And one of the things that we did do that I'm so glad that we had the foresight of doing is understand that the content that was being developed for the event is content that can be used after. Because it's that bird's eye view that people are looking for when they come on a tour. People may want to see property, but they want to learn more about people. So oftentimes the tour is not only about seeing the space, it's about feeling the energy, it's about engaging with the people. And so being able to take any content that we develop for our event and then position it in such a way that it can be utilized post was pretty critical for us. And we went into the development of that content with the knowledge that we were going to use it after.
Okay, other comments?
We also attracted new donors. We use different platforms. So looking at your social media engines, we did crowdfunding. We did Facebook Live events. And in terms of tours, you can still have virtual tours or different events, but with people. So, I mean, again, it's what you normally do. It's just what can you shift that to that will create the yield that you're seeking. So our crowdfunding pages did remarkably well. We were trending for a few weeks. And so we got everyone to kind of help and rally that. And as Tammy said too, we also created a lot of content, which is something we normally don't have time to do. So it was wonderful for a while where our lawyers weren't going to court or whatever. We used that time to build content. They created created series, and they answered frequently asked questions, and they did things that they normally wouldn't have time to do. So we really leveraged and on any opportunity that really showed up for us to take us forward and propel. So now, you know, we can keep putting that out. We had our executive director do success stories. Well, we've always asked him about all of the cases. Like, it's really hard to sit there and talk about case successes. So we did an entire series where, you know, we gave him, okay, you have 30 days in Ramadan, for example, give me 30 of the cases, and not just success cases, cases that moved you, cases that touched you, cases that scared you. But the goal was cases that, you know, moved our mission or gave us more reservoir to our mission. And so kind of he sat down, and every day he came on and he did, like, you know, a 10-minute or 5-minute video of just, this case touched me in this way or moved me in this way. And again, if we didn't have COVID, that opportunity or that time to sit him down and get him to do that didn't exist. So just kind of looking at what you have in front of you and using it to build a relationship.
So do we have time for one more question?
Yeah, one more question, then we'll close it up.
All right, this is from Sonal Gupta, who's with the National Indo-American Museum. She has a question. Many of our donors are not tech savvy. How do we attract them?
Sure, we have that a lot. That's been one of the biggest questions that we've had, is a lot of our donors are older and not tech savvy. But I kind of counter argument that a bit, and I'm sure the other two can touch on this, is everybody's becoming a little tech savvy now. Grandparents want to talk to their grandchildren, and Zoom is the way to do that because we don't want to get our grandparents sick. We've also had a couple of organizations have helplines beforehand of, call this number and we'll help you get Zoom set up, or we'll help you get the platform set up. I think the key is to make it as easy as possible. Send them to a website and have them click and have that video hosted on a website. So all they have to do is go to a website. That makes it easiest. You can then, you know, they can donate from there. They can text donate to this, you know, number to donate, and then they can use their phones to donate. So it's definitely, make it as easy as possible, but it's definitely still possible.
So I'll just jump in to say, don't, you know, if they don't, you meet your donor where they're at. So we did not stop sending mail. We sent cards, we sent information, we sent campaigns through the mail, and we called, right? You know, I have donors who I sent links to, and I was waiting on a Zoom, and I checked in, and he was waiting on the phone. So I hung up on Zoom and called him, and we had a good hour-long conversation on the phone. So, you know, the ways that used to work, and this is what, you know, I love, that tradition and truth always manifests. And so if something has worked in the past, not everybody has to move into what they're uncomfortable with. They can, and you can always offer that, you know, but reach them where they are. We got a lot of responses to our mails. I think we did relatively well on our campaigns through the mail as well, and phone call, good old phone calls. Mm-hmm. They worked.
Mm-hmm. And I would just add to that, you know, before technology, before email, before texting, before Zoom, before all of that, you just picked up the phone. You sent a letter, you picked up the phone, and it wasn't that long ago. It feels like it was forever, but it wasn't that long ago. And, you know, I think that sometimes that in person means more for people because, you know, you get Zoom fatigue. And it's not even just whether or not they're technology savvy. It's just that they're tired, you know, of sitting in front of a screen and having to make sure that the background is okay. And, you know, this morning I was like, oh my gosh, my son's little kitchen and then our refrigerator in the background. But you know what? I don't care because this is it. This is what I'm working with. So, you know, I think that sometimes people just need to, you know, Arshia said it, you just do what you did before all of this came about, and you just be you, and you just reach out in a way that makes sense. You go to where they're at, you interact with them, you engage, and you go for it.
This was great. And, you know, that could be another point of engagement to say, hey, we have this event coming up and there's different ways to access it. And would you like some help on getting onto Zoom? Again, use these opportunities. So, all right, so we're going to go ahead and close out. you know, we're also grateful to be able to have these conversations with you. I will go ahead and put out, you know, I think it's okay to say I can just email the chat to everyone that we have your emails, and you'll get all the resources and the connections to the panelists. So feel assured about that. We don't want any scarcity. Also, for next time, our next meeting will be August 4th. It will be led by the organizer is Jennifer Holmes at Rush, and it is entitled The Roles of Gender, Race, and Sexual Orientation on Philanthropy. So that will also be a great one. And then, you know, I want to add, I think this concept of we're all part of a larger community to share resources. We set up a series of free mission driver leadership cohorts, just because this is our way of contributing to helping our community stay engaged during a remote time. So that's another resource. We have one for nonprofit leaders, and it's fantastic. Anyone is welcome to join. So I'll also put that in the chat. So thank you all so much. We hope to see you back here. Thank you, Rich and
Thank
Margaret and Arshia and Tammy and Key. Special thanks to Forefront and Key Montgomery for hosting us and handling our technology. And we hope to see you back here August 4th. Go ahead and register on the Forefront site. I will send out an e-letter. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Go Mission Drivers.
Thank you, everyone.